Ephesians 5:21 in the New Living Translation says this: submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. The passage goes on to tell wives to submit to their husbands as unto the Lord, and husbands to love their wives as Christ loved the church, to the point of death. Welcome to Kingdom and Culture, where the grace and truth of God's kingdom impacts the complexity of culture. We're just going to jump right in. We are here in part 2 of a 2-part episode of Kingdom and Culture on the topic of marriage with special guests, Casey and Meygan Caston. We're discussing marriage and their recent book, The Marriage Habit, which has a lot of practical tools. It is going to be available is available to you, just brand new, hot off the press. So you might want to check it out. I think you can get it anywhere, Amazon, all the places. So in our last episode, we touched on the word initiation, how men can initiate better, and therefore how men and women can lead together better. We talked about how to forgive each other, how to deal with, Casey, you're going to get into this, how to deal with rage and anger.
Yeah.
And how to overcome bitterness in marriage. And so we'll touch on that soon. But you stated that your marriage, that is Casey and Meygan Caston, and all marriages, many marriages, basically are the greatest gospel presentation to a watching world where two people can live with harmony in the midst of their differences. And so out of that framework, I want to jump into this initiation idea as we're wrapping up that idea, but we're kind of using it as a continuation bridge of what does it mean for a man to initiate practically, and maybe that's where you could get into those other segues.
Yeah. Can I say to the ladies, I'll speak to all of them, it means just make effort. You don't have to be perfect.
Right.
We just want to see effort.
Do something.
Do something.
Well,
move. Act on it. Don't
act like you care.
Act like you care. Don't just tell us you love us. Actually go live it out. And he's going to speak more to that.
Because as DC Talk says, love is a verb.
Love is a verb.
I'm totally aging myself.
I have a tattoo says I choose love, because if we want to try to feel our way into love, it's not going to happen. So initiation to me, you think about when a man meets a woman, he starts the initiation process. He'll walk up to her and say, hey, you're kind of cute. I remember with Meygan, I was a frontline leader at Vanguard University, and I said I was part of the freshman welcoming committee, and she was an incoming freshman. And I was like, you need a private tour.
But he initiated that.
Yeah.
He initiated that.
Yeah. And then one day I got down on one knee and I initiated this conversation about let's get married. Right? It would be weird in our brain if you saw a woman get down on a knee to ask a man to marry her. It just doesn't.
Culturally, it still would not make total sense.
Yeah,
correct.
It kind of messes, because internally we understand this principle. It is written in the code of our hearts that men are called to lead. We love strong action heroes that are men, making courageous choices to protect and to fight for truth and justice. It's not so much the other way around. We don't want to see women doing that, because masculine energy is like the spark, right? And feminine energy is like this response to the spark. So that all happens really easily when we're dating, but then we get married. And then men naturally want to go to the man cave, right? And then, you hear these stories about, she wears the pants in the family because the roles have reversed. Now she's leading not because she wants to. She's actually leading out of resentment and bitterness, because nature abhors a vacuum. Somebody's going to have to step up to the plate and do this. She's the one who steps in, but she doesn't do it quite like from this place of softness, right? Yeah. As dads, we see our kids, cliff jumping, right? And we're like, go higher. We're like the risk takers, right? That's masculine energy, is go do something great. Feminine energy is like, stay safe. Let's be soft. And we need both kinds of energy within our parenting. So when you talk about differences, we're going to get into a tool in just a second. I do want to say this. Meygan and I are more different than we are alike. And I think there's some divine comedy where God's like, so I'm going to take your core wounding here, and I'm going to take another core wounding here, and it's just going to perfectly like bump into each other, and probably stands up in heaven's like, let's see what happens.
Well, if I could say, sorry,
Yes, go for
Timothy
it.
Keller's meaning of marriage talks about the purpose of marriage isn't for your benefit, but to sharpen and make the other person better in many respects.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we have to choose, like you said earlier in the last episode, that we have to choose to want to work on ourselves with incentive to do so, that like we don't want to live with regrets. But in doing so, we then also sharpen the other person through
Absolutely.
self-sacrifice and all that. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that as women, we're looking for effort. We're looking for initiation. If the guy that we're married to was a bump on a log, we probably wouldn't have married him. There had to be something he did, something that we saw that was like, okay, we could do this forever. I always remind couples that.
Yeah.
Like go back, even if it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, there was effort made. Because if you went on a first date with a guy and he was on his phone the whole time, you'd be like, no date number
Not
2.
happening. Not
No,
happening.
of course not.
Right.
So you can, gentlemen, initiate. You have it in you. You just now need to make it happen. And so one of the tools we talk about in the Marriage Habit, our book, is we call it the weekly marriage business meeting.
Yes.
okay.
I love this
We
tool.
plan for our job. We have goals. We have KPIs. We have meetings. We know what's expected of us, right? We don't just show up on Monday morning to our office and go, all right, everyone, just do your thing. Like, no, we're talking about it. But here's the problem with couples is they're really good at their job or they're really structured with parenting their children. And then they just kind of wing it in their marriage. They use hope as a strategy.
Wow.
And it's not a strategy. You can't do that. So the weekly marriage business meeting is this idea where it's this once a week, about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And we do ours at Sunday night at 9 o'clock after the kids go to bed. Well, now we have teenagers, so actually they're staying up later than we are, I feel like. And we look at the upcoming week to make sure there's alignment. Our schedules, who's going where with who, when, our meal plans, who's cooking what meal, our budget. Is there anything big coming out of our
Right.
bank account this week that we need to talk about? But this is also when we get to make time for our marriage. We call it connection time.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a date night, and if you can do date nights, great.
Great.
But I think people think you have to have a lot of money, you have to have a lot of resources. No, you can do an in-home date
you
night.
go on
or
a walk?
connection time. You could go on a walk. That's a beautiful thing. We play cards almost every single
that's
night.
fun.
We have played so many games of rummy and golf.
We have
and-
like 20 decks of cards because
Yeah.
we'll burn through the deck.
Yeah. And so it's finding time, but putting that in your calendar and prioritizing your marriage. And I think if couples sat down and did this and said, listen, no matter how busy we are, but we are a priority. Oh, and if a husband initiated this and said, hey, babe, let's sit down and do the weekly marriage business meeting. I want to make sure we're aligned. The wife is going to say, thank you, hallelujah, amen, let's do this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, and in that, I think this fits. In your book, you have some pretty practical advice.
Yeah. Well, they're tools. They're
Tools.
Yeah, I think principles and theories, and I would even say verses,
Yeah.
can create this knowledge base that feels very up here.
Yeah.
But then, well, what does that look like on a Tuesday morning?
How does that play
Right.
out? Yeah.
So we kind of encapsulated our top 10 tools and the frameworks that we've given to couples, not only that healed us from our own marriage, like when we hated each other, like we talked about in the part 1.
Yeah.
We went from this place of absolute thrill and enthrallment to hatred within 3 years of marriage.
Wow.
And then had to figure out, how do we make this better? Like, what's the practical, tactical ways of healing the relationship? And then how do we optimize our relationship? Like, what's the next level?
Because I don't want just an average marriage. I want an amazing marriage.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because the first thought came to my mind, maybe some couples don't hate each other, but they just tolerate each other. They just kind of
I don't want to just
meh.
tolerate.
They're just meh. The meh emoji.
Yeah, like I want to have fun.
Yeah.
I want to enjoy my marriage. I want to love this man across from me. And so I think that is something more that we're like, we want couples to thrive. Because again, if the Christian marriages of today are thriving, not surviving,
Right.
not tolerating,
Right.
you will be a light in
Yeah.
a very dark world.
Yeah.
But if you're just
First,
kind of like, bleh, you're probably not shining a bright light.
And let's not forget, we're discipling these little kids for 18 years.
Right.
They do not do what we tell them to do. They do what they see us doing.
And that's scary.
Very.
And that's very scary. So one of the harder questions that I ask a couple in crisis is, and this one brings a lot of tears. I said, how would your kids describe your marriage? Yeah. That one's like I never thought about it from my kids' perspective, that they're watching us silent treatment, screaming and yelling.
Or live like roommates.
Or smiling for everybody else, but as soon as the doors close, we're just like this.
Or live like roommates and they're just tolerating. Like, I don't know if my mom and dad really like each other. I think that they're just kind of roommates. We get that a lot from...
And so they're kind of the first fruits of a great marriage. Yeah. But then think about this. If we knew how many people were watching our lives, I think all of us would live drastically different lives, because the lie of the enemy is you're not significant. But our marriage is. Yeah. And it's out of this like basis of strength, of groundedness, of identity. We're a team that then creates all this massive energy to go out into the world, to take risks and know I got a safe place at home.
Yeah. And to help others.
To deal with, to process insecurities, knowing that I have a safe, vulnerable person to vent with. Yeah. Right. And so that if we think about a faith community filled with strong marriages. Yeah. What kind of impact would it make in the world around, just as they're watching, like, what is up with these people?
Because as you said in episode 1 of this 2-part, that the families, that Satan's going after families, he's going after the men, but if the family is strong, then the church is strong. And you said they don't have to worry about tithing and all these other side issues. If the marriages are strong, then you have a strong church predominantly. And yes, we acknowledge there are single people called to that by God's grace. I'm not one of those. Yeah. Celibacy, I guess, would be the gift there. But they're called to singleness, praise God. So you have healthy singles, healthy marriages. A church can thrive in that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We live in a culture that thrives, or I should say celebrates convenience and comfort.
Yeah.
And so what's happening now is we're seeing that showing up in marriages with emotionally lazy spouses. Yeah. And we're also seeing that in our young adults. Yeah. That 20 to 30 years old, right? They're coming out of college. They're trying to get themselves established. They're dealing with student debt. They're trying to find affordable living, which means they're delaying marriage. Yeah. Because someone's telling them, I don't know who is, you need to get yourself established and then get married. And that's totally backwards. Wow. Because
you're never established. You've never arrived. You've never arrived. Right. Have you and your wife arrived? Have you got the secret sauce and you're never going to have to work on each other again?
I'm still wondering what I'm going to do when I grow up.
There you go. Exactly. So, but there is this thought of that you have to have all these ducks in a row and then get married. And while we're saying, you probably don't want to live with your parents, and
you should have some financial viability. Yes. Right.
But other than that, I mean, there's.
But here's where it's, if you want to be patriotic, you need to get married and have lots of kids, okay? Because probably in the next 5 years, we're hitting the tip-top point of America's population growth. Right. And we're going to start to see a population decline. Wow. The reason why we're seeing this demographic shift is because the average marrying age is now crossed 30 years old. So that means people have less time in marriage to have kids.
Well, and life gets more complex the older you get, and you get more set in your ways, so you're less likely probably to want to change that and get married to somebody else who will make you change that.
Yes. Yeah.
Correct. So if we are, like, a big vision I have in the next 5 years is I want to start a national marriage movement where we start to understand faith-based, yes, love it, but everyone needs to get on board with, we need to get married, we need to have kids. If we love America and we love what this land has brought for us, this is something we cannot abandon.
Well, isn't that one of the original mandates of Scripture? Be fruitful and multiply.
Hello.
On that note,
yes,
you talk about sex in your book.
Sure do.
Heyo.
For any people in their cars with their children, maybe turn down the dial at this point, because we'll be PG, but we're gonna talk real talk on this category in the context of one man, one woman relationship. So what are some practical tools, or as we said earlier, the initiation talk, maybe on both sides, to open this door to talk honestly about it? What are the tools you provide?
Well, one thing I want to start with is to say, who created sex?
God. Yeah.
Okay.
Who created the
That's
feelings
rhetorical,
behind
and I
sex?
answered it.
Yes.
Yes.
So I want to also know that it is very normal to feel uncomfortable, to feel like maybe this is something taboo, or there's a lot of shame around.
Right.
This is something that we are very sensitive to, obviously, with coaching couples, because sometimes there's past sexual trauma. There's
Right.
a lot behind there, or maybe you were just raised in a home where you weren't allowed to talk about it.
Right.
And that actually was a huge issue in our marriage, where I grew up in a church that was very open about it and preached about it from the pulpit, and Casey grew up never anyone talking about it at church or in his home life.
Wow.
And that was one of our biggest issues. Is I would want to have conversations, and he'd be like, he'd get so uncomfortable.
He didn't have words.
He didn't have
tools
words
to speak it.
And I think, babe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you also believed like it should just come organically and naturally, and we don't have to talk about it.
Correct.
Like,
Wow.
it's just God created it, and we'll figure it out.
Just turn off the lights and we bump into each other.
And that wasn't
Okay.
happening. Yeah, and that wasn't happening. And so our 10th and last habit of the 10 habits is about sex, and specifically our higher level encouragement is couples have to start talking about it.
Yeah.
And we guide those conversations in the book, but you've got to first be able to talk about it. And we have to be able to understand that it's embarrassing for a lot of people. But God created it, and it can be this beautiful, amazing gift to your marriage if you let it.
Yeah. Wow. Anything else to add there? Just, I mean, I'd say this, like, there's tools here and that's one of the reasons why I asked you guys to be on, is that this is something that people can use as a resource for their marriage, for their relationships.
I think,
and what I'm saying on radio, for those just listening, the Marriage Habit
yes,
book that people
I think if you go into this conversation unprepared and just trying to wing it, it's gonna be very, very clunky.
Right.
And you're probably not gonna see the results you want.
Or you'll feel like, why is my husband bringing this up all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Did something
Out of
happen?
left field.
Is he dissatisfied?
What's
so
the question
why
behind the question?
we always like to say, blame Casey and Meygan, or blame our resources. I saw that. I read this in this book, and I
Okay.
wanted to bring it up. That is always a great segue.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
We can blame
us.
you guys.
Blame
We're the
us.
scapegoats.
Yes.
Yeah.
Make us the scapegoats. We do this with all of our coaching clients.
That's
Say,
great.
hey, Meygan told me to say this, and I'm just trying it out.
Well, and speaking of, and we're about, because I just want to let everybody know who we're listening to. If you're in your car or listening on radio, or you're on this podcast, this is Casey and Meygan Caston, and they wrote the book, The Marriage Habit, and they have for lack of a better description, a marriage evangelistic ministry. I labeled it that. That's not what they call it. Marriage 365. So on Instagram, you go at Marriage 365 to learn more about what they do.
Yeah, well, I actually want to talk about, so I think there's a tactic that's going on, and that is that the enemy does everything he can to get you in the bedroom before marriage. And then once you say I do, the strategy switches.
Bring it.
He tries to do everything in his power to keep you out of the bedroom.
Wow.
Once you get married. And here's why. Sex is a very powerful experience. There's hormones. There's a lot of emotion going on. God knows how powerful this thing that he created that creates this connection, this bond that we have with one another. But Mike, I rarely have to talk about sex with a couple because it's all the noise outside the bedroom that creates barriers for couples to get it on in the bedroom.
Right.
So probably the number one thing that we're dealing with in coaching couples is resentment and unforgiveness.
Wow.
And I think this really hurts me personally if I were to tap into God's heart and feel that prophetic voice of like, I have called you to this ministry of reconciliation to the watching world around you, and you can't get it figured out in your home.
Wow.
And I just think about the mandate for forgiveness of what we're supposed to walk through. Peter asked Jesus, how many, and I think he was bragging like 7 times. Should I forgive my brother 7
that's
times?
huge.
Yeah. And Jesus like, no, try infinity more.
Yeah, 70 times 7.
Well, and why is it?
Forever.
And then why is it? Yeah, forever. And why is it in the Lord's daily prayer?
Yeah.
Because
Forgive
he
us our
knew
debts as we forgive our debtors.
we are all sinners. We are all broken. We're all going to be hurting each other. We're going to have to forgive, and we're going to hopefully have to ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
And that goes in marriage too.
And
Yes.
if we're harboring that sort of resentment in our marriage, remember Matthew, Jesus said, if you are coming to bring a gift to the altar, I mean, think about how
Matthew
holy
18.
Yes, how holy that is.
Yeah.
Well, Matthew 5:23 says, therefore, if you're offering your gift at the altar,
Oh, yeah.
and remember that your brother and sister, you've got something against them. And I'm thinking about how holy is it to bring that sacrifice to God. And he's saying, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Leave it.
I'm going to stuff my finger in my ears right now and do the na game until you go first deal with reconciling.
Make it right.
Make it right. Then come back and bring your gift to the altar. Now, I just want to say there are sanctuaries filled with people where God's doing the na game
Yeah.
because they have not first dealt with what something is really hard, is going to your brother and saying, where there's injury, we need to do a pardon.
And so we have a whole habit on how to forgive.
Oh,
because
that's beautiful.
we hear about we need to forgive. Everyone listening knows they need to forgive.
Yeah.
But how do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you do that? And we had to learn that when we hated each other. How did our hearts soften towards one another? And it's amazing the 4 steps we walk people through and how healing it is.
I just think of David when he said, Lord, search me and find every wicked way in me. In other words, wherever I've sinned against you that I don't even know about, so that you'll hear my prayers.
That's a courageous prayer, by the way.
It is a bold prayer because now God's going to point it out because you asked it.
Yeah, you asked him.
And so in essence, you're like, okay, leave your gift. I'll receive it. But first, confession, humility, get your heart right.
So, and Mike, that's where I struggle because I work with Christian couples who's considering divorce
Wow.
because they have this overwhelming sense of anger and resentment.
It's not their communication styles. It's not their lack of sex. It's not that they're more different. It's that they've hurt each other and they don't know how to repair.
So there's some wounds that just
There's
need healing.
wounds. Yeah. So then they see each other in a very different light. And that's what happened with us. We know it because that was our marriage.
Yeah.
And until you start to apologize and forgive, which are some of the habits in our book, then you can actually heal the relationship. And that's the hope. Because I know we promised hope for the listener. And that's the hope that
We're getting there.
if God can redeem our marriage, he can redeem anybody's marriage. I genuinely have seen it and I live
And there's
it.
nothing like super special about Meygan and I. I mean, we are like, seriously, we're like the just average couple. But here's the thing, you spot it, you got it. Like, I see that in other people because I'm like, oh yeah, I know exactly what that looks like.
Yeah.
And here's the way out. Here's the avenue. And I think that's so true what you just said is I've been in the church for 40 plus years. I've been told that I need to apologize, that I need to forgive, that I need to work on my marriage. But rarely have I ever gotten someone to say how to do it. And I think that that's one of the mandates that God has given us is the how-to. So the marriage habit really is kind of almost like a handbook where, you could read it from front to cover, front to back, I guess.
Cover to cover.
Cover to cover. There you go.
Front to, let's just smash it up. Or you could actually just drop in on one of those habits and these
take it.
tools as a framework. But here's my caveat. You have to deal with the anger and resentment first.
Yeah.
Because then the tools become weapons.
Yeah. Wow. So to the hope thing, you framed it this way. So many people feel alone in their marriage, carrying the emotional weight by themselves. It seems that you both have a lot to offer here on how you speak to each other. That is language, practical tools, and real hope for those who feel stuck and unseen. So as we've already touched on quite well, I think, is forgiveness and sacrificial love for your spouse applicable here into the hope factor? How can people have more hope in their marriage? How do they find that hope? And I want to frame it a little bit here. You don't have to go unpack it, but Romans 5 talks about how, suffering, which produces perseverance. So if you're willing to go through the hard stuff, perseverance, character, and character, hope, and hope doesn't disappoint. But let's go back to that suffering piece, to that point of developing perseverance, of the tools there to persevere through it. So how do we get to hope and be filled with hope? And we have only a few minutes.
Yes.
So there's that.
Yes, I know. I'm like, that could be a really long conversation.
Yeah.
I think for me, as someone who felt very hopeless in my marriage, I'm going to encourage anyone to read the book of Proverbs.
Okay.
There's 31 chapters. I think God did that for a reason. There was intent behind there. So whatever the date is, I just pick it up because it really is the book of marriage. There's so much wisdom and guidance and also a message of hope in that. So I would say that's a great place to start. Just open your scripture and start with Proverbs.
Godly wisdom.
Yep. Every day, read a Proverbs of the day. I think another thing would be to reach out to someone that's safe and share what's going on.
Yeah.
Keeping it in, it is just allowing the enemy to fill you with more shame and doubt and hopelessness. And other believers, other safe friends, pastors, mentors are hopefully going to give you that inspiration that you really need.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we're meant to do any of this alone. And we are a very isolated culture, and we shouldn't be. And so I would encourage anyone, you're going to have to be vulnerable and brave. But when you do that and other believers step in and say, hey, thank you so much for sharing. And I just want to share, I've also struggled in my marriage, because chances are another couple that's been married has also struggled. Wow. And they'll probably open up, and hopefully they will. And especially after they listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
But that should help. We need to do this as a community.
Yeah.
This is not something you should ever do on your own.
Do it together.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. Well, we're like plumb out of time, and I'm bringing this in for a landing. And so I just want to say thank you to both of you for both episodes, part 1 and part 2. And man, I want to encourage people, get a hold of the book, The Marriage Habit. Go to @Marriage365 on Instagram to follow Casey and Meygan. They also have some funny videos. I didn't even get to mention that. The videos are hilarious.
I'm trying to channel my inner
Funny guy.
Yeah, as a delivery boy.
Yeah, so people that know you, if you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
Yeah, that's right. So
you.
I just want to say thank you to both of you. Thank you to those of you listening on radio and on podcasts for joining us for Kingdom and Culture. And we will see you next time on Kingdom and Culture. Thank you so much.